Let's get to it. This, Mia O'Brien, the image seen around the world last night here. Tail end of the fourth quarter. Chiefs are on a drive. We got a tie game. This has been an all-time classic to this point. We're talking this might be a top 5 Super Bowl of all time until this moment. A controversial holding call on third down on James Bradbury saw the Chiefs march to a chip shot field goal win over the Eagles. Bradbury admitted post-game that it was, in fact, a hold, and he was hoping that the refs wouldn't call it. But they did, Mia, and it's caused a lot of outrage. Some people say, let them play. This kind of thing happens a lot. Others say, hey, if the player himself is admitting it, well, that speaks for itself. Mia, is this the worst call ever in a situation like this, or are the refs right to throw a flag?
I mean, they weren't right to throw the flag, but it's far from the worst. I mean, off the top of my dome, I can't think of, an immediate worst. I mean, but obviously I'm sure there are a lot of, Minnesota Vikings, New Orleans Saints fans that can think of a PI call that they believe was worse than this. I think there's two sides of the coin, John. There's the side of it that human error is part of the game. We've spoken about that on Out of Bounds before. Human error, human officials, this is part of the game. That's number one. Number two, Bradbury admitted that he did hold him. So there's that. But at the same time, at this point in time, and my dad even asked me about it this morning, he was like, how many holds could they have potentially called in the trenches throughout the course of this game, and they let them play? So why decide to get ticky-tack in the final 2 minutes of a ball game? In my personal opinion, I think the Chiefs would have scored. They would have, well, first of all, if that third down, if they don't throw the flag.
I think we could all agree they would have scored regardless.
They would have scored regardless. That's number one. And number two, I mean, judging by Jalen Hurts' arm on that Hail Mary attempt, which, listen, I understand they would have had about $130 to get downfield, and maybe they would have had a chance. But at the rate the Chiefs were going at, I don't foresee a world in where even if Jalen Hurts and the Eagles score, and yes, they obviously could have kicked a field goal and then would have gone to overtime, I still only see the Chiefs winning this game, personally speaking. And so that's where, for me, if anything, yes, does it take out, it made it, the script. This is what the NFL wanted. Walk-off field goal for the Chiefs. Mahomes wins. I get it. On the surface level, it looks like the script. I get it. Shout out Arian Foster. But I think it was inevitable that the Chiefs were going to pull this one out.
Was it a little anticlimactic to end such a great game in the way that it did as a result of a penalty? Perhaps. Number one, though, Harrison Butker had to make that kick. And even though it was a chip shot, we've seen plenty of kickers miss chip shots all year long. He missed a kick
earlier in the game.
He missed a kick earlier in the game off the post. But the way that I look at it, Mia, I don't really have an issue with the refs throwing a flag here. I don't. And I know a lot of people say, well, call it consistent the whole game. I saw an analogy earlier today, and I totally agree with it. If you go 65 and a 60, can a cop pull you over?
In theory.
They sure can. Do they all the time?
No.
Probably not. But can it happen, and does it happen? Yes. Absolutely it does.
It didn't happen to me today, thank goodness, driving down I-95.
I got pulled over one time going 38 and a 35.
Yeah.
It happens. Yep. It's reality. If you break the rules, you have to be ready to reap the consequences of that.
That's a very good analogy, by the way.
Absolutely. And it is referee discretion here. Was it in a major moment? Yes. But guess what? Then you're also saying if he doesn't throw that flag, you're saying, man, that was clear as day holding. The narrative would have just been flipped. That's clear. Because listen, it's undeniable there was contact. Undeniable. You say it's clear as day holding. How'd they not throw a flag? And maybe we'd rather live in a world where you don't throw a flag versus you do throw a flag. But I also think that an official's job is to throw a flag when there's a penalty. That's the first order of business as far as I see it, Mia. The second order of business is if you don't want the game to come down to a penalty, maybe you don't let the Chiefs score on every single offensive possession that they had in the second half.
There it is, John Alba. There it is. And to which I want to read for our listeners and our commenters a series of tweets that I released, and then a reply that I think speaks to that exact point. So I said this last week on the show. I said this last week on my day job at 1010XL and XL Primetime. This was a legacy game for Patrick Mahomes. Yes, whether you agree with their whole "we were doubted" storyline or not,
That's
the fact of the
stupid.
matter is, if Patrick Mahomes starts his career 1-2 in Super Bowls, there's people questioning.
Mhm.
I don't know. This was a legacy game, whether you like it or not. And of course, a lot of angry bots came for me on the Twitter machine. That's fine. I really appreciated this one, though, courtesy of Arn_Dronehammer. Great handle. Despite the tacky penalty, the Eagles let the Chiefs back into the game. They somehow gave up that punt return despite having Tony surrounded. Now Mahomes can start chasing Brady. And I quote tweeted it and I said, that's the tweet because it's the truth. Because not only, John, did they allow for the Chiefs to come back into this game, Patrick Mahomes, yes, I know he only had 186 yards.
And his dad played Major League Baseball.
Yes, did you know that, folks? If you didn't, now you do. Also, he and his wife and their kids are already in Disney World. I'm not sure how that one worked. 21 of 27. Near perfect performance. I don't care if it was for only 186 yards. The man is playing on one leg. And when he turned the Jets on that 20-yard scramble late in the fourth quarter, he doesn't look like he has an ankle injury. So let's start with that too. But the biggest one for me, John, the play that Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy stole right out of the Jaguars playbook and admitted to it because, of course, Doug Peterson's their boy.
Because it worked.
Because it worked. But then, John, and this is the damning thing against the Philadelphia Eagles and Jonathan Gannon, their defense coordinator, who may become the Cardinals coach by tomorrow. They didn't just beat them once on that touchdown play.
Beat them twice.
Back to back.
Mm-hmm.
That is an indictment. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. It's, you handed them the game.
In the same quarter, nonetheless.
Same quarter. Yep.
Yeah.
So,
I thought it was a coaching clinic from the Kansas City coaching staff in the second half of this game. Not to say that Philly coached this game poorly, because I don't think they did. They brought a great game plan. And listen, say what you want. We're going to talk quarterback legacies in a minute, but I thought Jalen Hurts was just so fantastic in this game, even with the fumble. I thought that Jalen Hurts showed that he is like a guy that the NFL should be parading on every ad and he can be the guy, which is awesome for him and awesome for Philly fans. But it's as simple as that. You don't let a team get back into it if you don't want it to come down to a potential missed call by a referee. And guess what? It wasn't a missed call. It was by the books, Mia O'Brien.
Right.
This was the right call. Right. It's just a matter of, do you do it? There's an unwritten rule. You don't do it. Well, guess what? We always talk about how unwritten rules are stupid.
We get upset about unwritten rules, usually.
Unwritten rules are stupid. They are dumb. And that's a dumb one here, in my opinion. I get it. There are holes in the trenches, but there's something I want to bring up, too, that Patrick Mahomes did. Patrick Mahomes knew what he was doing in that play. Patrick Mahomes wasn't trying to hit Juju. He threw that ball 20 yards over his head. He threw that ball in his direction to get the ref's attention over there to say, look what's going on. I see this hold here. Mm-hmm. That Patrick Mahomes is a smart guy.
Yep.
And that is exactly what happened on that play. And as the referee said afterwards, Mia, it was a textbook holding call.
Yep. And one more final note, John. The Eagles, the time of possession. Did you see the final line on this?
Not the final line, no.
The Eagles had an 11-minute advantage in time of possession. The Chiefs had the ball for 24 minutes and 13 seconds in a ball game in which they scored 38 points. Their offense scored 31. Obviously, they had a defensive touchdown as well. This is an Eagles defense we were talking about all week. 70-plus sacks, all-time great defense. And they sacked Patrick Mahomes how many times last night? What more needs to be said?
Yeah.
And I don't think that's a great Chiefs offensive line for what it's worth.
They played a hell of a game yesterday, that's for sure. And again, the game plan was there. It took them a little longer to execute, and they were able to execute at the end of the day. I'm not getting my pants in a bunch about this holding call. I know some people are and think it just tainted this all-time great game. Did it lead to a little bit of an anticlimactic ending? Sure. But rules are rules.
It was also the ending so many people saw coming. I think that's why it was anticlimactic.
Rules are rules at the end of the day. And as we wrap this topic here, big time kudos to James Bradbury, who in the worst moment of his life probably said, yeah, I messed up. I committed a foul, and the referees reserved the right to call that penalty. And they did. So that should be a learning lesson for athletes out there. Take some accountability. It's okay to crap all over the refs every now and then, but in a moment like this, you take the accountability, and kudos to him on that, Mia.
If you want to see all our videos about real news stories that are funny, stupid, or weird, click the subscribe button below. Otherwise, we'll start posting spoilers about your favorite new movies.